You handed her the answer and she looked at you like you slapped her. That's what happened. Strip away the confusion, the replaying it in your head at 2 a.m., the quiet frustration you swallowed on the drive home. That's the raw truth of the moment. You gave her exactly what she needed. And she punished you for it. Not with words necessarily. Sometimes it's the silence that hits harder. The way her eyes go flat. The way she turns her body slightly away from you like you just became someone she doesn't recognize. You were trying to be useful. She received it as something else entirely. And here's what burns. You weren't guessing. You weren't fumbling. You saw the situation with total clarity. The answer was obvious. You handed it over like a gift wrapped in logic and good intentions. She didn't open it. She set it on fire with her disappointment. Now you're standing in the wreckage of a conversation that should have taken 3 minutes. It's been 45. And somehow you're the villain. This isn't about one night. One argument. One bad exchange. This is the recurring disaster that nobody prepares you for. Nobody pulls you aside at 22 and says, listen, there will be moments where being right is the worst thing you can be. Nobody teaches you that competence can feel like cruelty to the person receiving it. You've been solving problems your entire life. School trained you for it. Work pays you for it. Every system you operate in rewards the person who identifies the issue and eliminates it fastest. You're that person. You're proud of being that person. Then she sits across from you carrying something heavy. And every skill you've built becomes the wrong skill. Every instinct fires in the wrong direction. The machinery that makes you excellent everywhere else makes you terrible right here. That gap between what you intended and what she received is where relationships quietly bleed out. Not in explosions. In paper cuts. Dozens of them. Hundreds over years. Each one small enough to ignore. Together, enough to kill everything. You stop offering. She stops sharing. The space between you fills with something neither of you built on purpose. You built it accidentally. One rejected solution at a time. Most men feel this and assume the problem is her. Some men feel this and assume the problem is them. Both assumptions are wrong. The problem isn't a person. The problem is a collision that neither side sees coming until the damage is already done. That collision is what we need to take apart. You didn't learn to fix things. You were born reaching for the broken piece. Before anyone taught you a single lesson about manhood, something in your wiring was already scanning for what's wrong and how to make it right. That impulse lives deeper than education. Deeper than culture. It sits in the bone. It fires before thought even arrives. Watch a boy on a playground. Something breaks. He's already moving toward it. Not to stare at it. Not to discuss how the breaking made everyone feel. To put it back together. That instinct never left you. You just got a job title and a salary. Every structure you've moved through reinforced the same message. The kid who figures it out gets the grade. The employee who untangles the mess gets the promotion. The man who handles the crisis gets the respect. Nobody clapped for the guy who sat quietly and acknowledged how stressful the crisis was. They clapped for the guy who ended it. You internalized something ruthless and specific. Your worth is directly tied to your ability to make problems disappear. Not analyze them. Not feel them. Eliminate them. That equation became your operating system. It runs underneath everything. Every conversation. Every relationship. Every moment someone you care about opens their mouth and describes something difficult. The moment she starts talking, your machinery activates. You can't help it. It's automatic. She says the first sentence and your brain is already 3 steps ahead, building the bridge from where she is to where she needs to be. You're constructing the solution before she finishes describing the situation. And it feels generous to you. Feels like the highest thing you can offer. Your attention. Your analysis. Your ability to cut through noise and find the exit. You're giving her the thing that makes you valuable everywhere else on earth. Here's where it fractures. She didn't come to you for an exit. She came to you for company inside the room she's trapped in. She wanted you to sit down in the dark with her. Instead you kicked the door open and said, "Follow me." Efficient. Logical. Absolutely devastating to the person who needed presence, not escape. Your speed became the insult. Your clarity became the dismissal. The thing that makes you extraordinary in every other arena made you tone-deaf in the one arena that matters most. You crossed the distance between problem and solution so fast that you forgot she was still standing at the starting line. Not because she couldn't move. Because she wasn't ready to. And nobody asked. She's not handing you a puzzle to solve. She's handing you a window into what it felt like to live through something. That distinction is everything. And most men miss it completely because the two things look identical from the outside. She describes a situation. You hear a problem. She describes what happened. You hear a malfunction that needs correction. The wiring is so automatic you don't even notice you made the translation. But something got lost in that translation. The entire reason she opened her mouth. What she's actually doing when she tells you about the nightmare boss or the friend who crossed a line or the day that crushed her is showing you her insides. Not the event. The interior experience of the event. How it landed in her body. What it stirred up in her mind. The doubt it triggered. The anger it released. The exhaustion it created. The situation is just the delivery vehicle. What she's actually handing you is the emotional reality that the situation produced. And that reality needs something specific from you. It needs to be seen, acknowledged, confirmed as real and significant. When you leap straight to fixing the external situation, you accidentally communicate something brutal. You're telling her that the interior experience she just exposed doesn't register. That it doesn't count. That what matters is the mechanics of the problem, not the human cost of experiencing it. You didn't mean that. But that's what arrived. Her processing works differently than yours. You externalize. You locate the problem outside your body and you attack it there. The feelings resolve when the external cause gets handled. Simple. Plain. Effective. She internalizes first. The experience comes inside. It sits in her chest, her throat, her stomach. It needs to be organized through language. Shaped into narrative. Transformed from chaos into something that has edges and a beginning and an end. The telling is the organizing. And your receiving of the telling completes a circuit that allows the charge to drain. Without that completion, the electricity stays live. The experience remains unprocessed. Not just unsolved. Unwitnessed. And unwitnessed pain carries a specific kind of loneliness that solved problems never touch. This is why your perfect answer landed like an attack. She wasn't asking you to fix the external. She was asking you to witness the internal. To look at what this thing did to her and say with your full attention that yes, I see it and it matters because you matter. The witnessing isn't complicated. It's not therapy speak. It's the basic human act of letting someone know their experience registered with another person. That they aren't alone inside it. Something shifted in the culture over the last 20 years and it made this whole dynamic significantly worse. Ideas that belonged in therapist offices migrated into everyday relationship advice. And during that migration something toxic happened. The nuance died. The insight hardened into law. What started as useful observation became absolute prescription that you weren't allowed to question. The observation was legitimate. People need emotional validation. Jumping to solutions too quickly can feel dismissive. Active listening improves connection. All true. All useful when applied with judgment. But the judgment part got stripped out. The idea metastasized into something rigid and punishing. Emotional processing became the only correct response. Solution offering became evidence of emotional incompetence. One style got elevated to universal correctness. The other got pathologized. You saw this everywhere. Books, articles, Instagram therapists, relationship coaches building entire platforms on the same 5 words. Just listen. Don't try to fix it. And men absorbed it, internalized it, took it as confirmation that their instincts were defective. That the way they naturally expressed care through action, through solving, through making the hard thing disappear was fundamentally broken. Not just sometimes misapplied. Structurally wrong. The man who heard this message enough times learned something corrosive. What I bring naturally is unwanted. How I care is incorrect. The thing I'm best at is the thing I should never do. So he stopped doing it. Not because he developed genuine emotional presence. Because he got scared out of his natural response. He sits there during her difficulty performing the listening he's been told is correct. He nods at the right moments. Makes sympathetic sounds. Keeps his mouth shut while the solution burns in his chest because he's been trained that the burning itself is the disease. And she feels the performance. Of course she does. The man who's genuinely present registers differently than the man following a script handed to him by a culture that told him his masculinity was toxic. The script following produces its own kind of emptiness. He's technically doing what she said she wanted. But it feels hollow because it is hollow. Suppression isn't attunement. Silence isn't intimacy. The man who says nothing because he's terrified of saying the wrong thing isn't emotionally intelligent. He's emotionally paralyzed. The culture created this paralysis, then blamed him for being paralyzed. And here's the real damage. The framework made itself untouchable. Any pushback against it becomes proof that you need it. The man who says my way of caring has value too gets labeled as defensive, as missing the point. The criticism validates the framework. The circle closes. There's no exit. The cost of this framework shows up in places nobody wants to examine. It shows up in the man who stops engaging entirely. He tried to help. Got rejected. Tried again. Got rejected again. Every contribution filtered through a lens that designated it as failure. Eventually he draws the obvious conclusion. Stop contributing. The withdrawal isn't dramatic. It's gradual. He shares less, offers less, invests less energy in conversations he's learned will end with him being told he did it wrong. The distance grows quietly. She experiences it as emotional unavailability, which it is. But the unavailability didn't start with his inability to connect. It started with repeated experiences of connection being punished. He reached for her. She slapped his hand. He reached again. She slapped again. Eventually he stopped reaching. That's not emotional incompetence. That's basic pattern recognition. It shows up in the woman whose actual problems accumulate and decay. She's got a work situation that requires strategy, a financial reality that needs planning, a health concern demanding action. But the framework says process first, feel first. So the processing happens. The feelings get validated. And the situation that needed intervention continues rotting because nobody moved from acknowledgement to action. The framework that promised to serve her has trapped her in an endless loop of being heard without being helped. She's emotionally validated straight into concrete consequences that validation doesn't fix. It shows up in the relationship itself. An unspoken hierarchy develops. Her communication style is correct. His needs modification. That hierarchy creates resentment neither person names because naming it violates the rules. He can't say I think my way of caring has value too without being labeled defensive. Without being told he's still not getting it. The framework has made itself bulletproof. Any challenge to it confirms its necessity. The man who objects to being told his instincts are broken is demonstrating exactly why those instincts are broken. The logic eats its own tail. Everyone stays trapped. Both partners lose. She loses a man who's genuinely present. Gets a man performing presence instead. He loses confidence that anything he brings matters. Every natural impulse gets run through a filter that marks it defective. The relationship loses the thing that made it valuable in the first place. Complementarity. Different strengths. Different perspectives. Different capacities. The reason two different people partner together. That diversity gets flattened into sameness. Both partners expected to process identically. The expectation eliminates the advantage that made the partnership stronger than either individual alone. The framework promised connection. It delivered uniformity. And uniformity masquerading as intimacy is just loneliness with company. Neither extreme works. And pretending one does is the lie keeping everyone stuck. The man who bulldozes past her experience to deliver solutions at maximum speed isn't serving her. He's serving his own discomfort with sitting in difficulty. The man who suppresses every practical instinct to perform therapeutic listening isn't serving her either. He's serving the framework that told him suppression equals growth. The truth lives between the extremes. And it's messier than either side admits. She doesn't always want the same thing. The idea that women uniformly want processing over solutions is a reduction that erases actual women in favor of a category. Some women in some moments want exactly the solution you're holding back. They want the strategic input, They want the practical help. They want someone who sees clearly and helps them navigate. Other moments the same woman wants none of that. She wants to be heard. She wants the emotional experience received before anything else happens. She wants to feel understood before you try changing what she's going through. The variation isn't inconsistency, just being human. Different moments produce different needs. The person who can read the difference becomes the person who provides what's actually wanted instead of what's generically prescribed. And here's what nobody says. He doesn't always want to solve either. The idea that men uniformly want to fix everything reduces men the same way. Sometimes he comes home carrying something heavy and he doesn't want a plan. He wants someone to acknowledge the weight is real. Those moments are less frequent maybe, but they exist. And when they do, he wants what she wants. Witnessing before strategy. The honest position is that both orientations serve real purposes. The emotional acknowledgement that says this is real and it matters serves the human need to feel seen. The practical response that says here's how to address this serves the human need to regain control over difficult circumstances. Neither need is lesser. Neither response is defective. The defect only exists when one response becomes the only acceptable response regardless of what the moment actually requires. The skill that matters isn't defaulting to either. It's reading what this particular moment with this particular person actually calls for. The reading requires attention, humility, willingness to occasionally get it wrong and adjust. Most people never develop the reading skill because they're too busy defending their default setting, insisting their way is right, demanding the other person adapt. The defensiveness guarantees the collision keeps happening. Same crash, different Tuesday. Nobody learning. Everyone bleeding. The relationship that works has both tools available. And two people humble enough to figure out which tool the moment needs. The pattern doesn't break during the pattern. It breaks outside of it. You can't negotiate how to handle difficulty while you're inside the difficulty. The time to have this conversation is before. In the calm moment. When neither of you is activated. When the conversation can be exploratory instead of defensive. This conversation changes everything. But most couples never have it. They just keep crashing into each other hoping the collision will somehow teach them both to swerve. Here's what it sounds like from your side. When you bring me something hard, I want to help. My instinct is to figure out how to fix it because that's how I show I care about what you're going through. I'm learning that sometimes you need me to hear you first before we get to fixing. I want to do that. I also need you to know that when I offer solutions, it's not because I'm dismissing what you feel. It's because I can't stand watching you hurt and doing nothing about it. That reframe matters. It takes solution offering out of the category of emotional failure and puts it in the category of love expressed differently. The reframe doesn't excuse bulldozing her experience. It does honor the motivation underneath the behavior. Her side of the conversation matters equally. When I bring you something difficult, I usually need to feel like you understand what I'm going through before I'm ready to hear what I should do about it. That doesn't mean I don't value your thinking. It means I need the emotional piece first. Sometimes I'll want your input after. Sometimes I just need to get it out. I'll try to tell you which one I need. The mutual acknowledgement creates architecture for future moments. When difficulty arrives, both partners have shared understanding that prevents the blind collision from repeating. The architecture includes simple tools that most couples never build. She can signal what she needs. I need to vent is clear. I could use your help thinking through this is also clear. The signals remove the guesswork that produces most of the friction. He can ask without it being failure. Do you want me to help brainstorm or do you need me to just be here right now? The question isn't weakness. It's precision. It says your needs matter enough for me to ask instead of assume. The exchange requires something from both parties that culture hasn't encouraged. From her. Acknowledgement that his solution offering is care, not dismissal. That his orientation has value even when it's not what she needs in that specific moment. From him. Willingness to sit in discomfort while she processes. To resist the pull toward immediate action. To trust that listening serves something real even when it feels like inaction. Neither abandons who they are. Both stretch toward what the other needs. The destination isn't choosing between fixer and listener. The destination is becoming the man who carries both and knows when to deploy each. This man exists. He's not performing sensitivity to satisfy a cultural prescription. He's not suppressing his instinct to solve because someone shamed him into silence. He's genuinely expanded. Added capability without subtracting capability. He can sit with her in the pain. And he can help her find her way out of it. He reads the moment and responds to what's actually there instead of what his default setting prefers. This man isn't less masculine. He's more complete. The completeness doesn't arrive through shame about his natural orientation. It arrives through honest recognition that his natural orientation is one tool in what should be a fuller set. The hammer is essential. But the man who only owns a hammer sees every situation as a nail. Adding tools doesn't mean the hammer was wrong. It means the hammer alone wasn't enough. Here's what this looks like in practice. She comes home carrying something heavy. He notices. He doesn't immediately begin constructing solutions. He sits down. He faces her. He listens. Not performing listening. Actually listening. He hears what happened. He hears what it did to her. He reflects back what he's hearing. That sounds exhausting. I'd be angry too. That's a lot to deal with. He watches her body. Does the tension release? Is she offloading the weight through the telling? Is the circuit completing? He stays present through the processing. He doesn't fidget toward the fix. He trusts the process even when his internal machinery is already generating solutions. Then he reads the shift. The moment where processing has done its work and she's ready. Sometimes she signals it explicitly. Sometimes the energy simply changes. She moves from expressing to assessing. The emotional charge has dissipated enough that the practical mind has space to operate. Now he offers what he has. Would it help if we thought through what to do about this? The question itself is generous. It asks permission. It acknowledges her agency. It offers his contribution as gift instead of imposition. If she says yes, he brings the full weight of his problem-solving capacity. The solutions he offers now land on prepared ground. She's been heard. She's been seen. The aloneness has been addressed. Now the practical help arrives not as replacement for emotional support but as extension of it. If she says no, he lets the solution go. He doesn't resent the unused help. He recognizes that his presence during the processing was itself the help. His attention was the contribution.